Hey everybody, it's Robert Phoenix here. What's happening? Running a little bit late tonight. Actually, a lot late. Usually, I start around 7:30, and we're about 42 minutes into the first period, or first part of the show. So my apologies. I've been working to put some stuff together for everybody tonight, and I'm going to try to condense as much as I can in about an hour and a half, maybe about 90 minutes. We're going to go for about 90 minutes tonight, and let's see if we've got some peeps in here. Making sure all my connections are good. There's Judy. There's Tamara. All right, Cato. We got Purple One is in the house. Very good. Very good. Very good. Nice to see everybody. Maybe I can make my. Whoa, hey, hey. It's a little too loud. Just pull this out a little bit. There we go. There's Beth. Hi, Beth. There's Scoobs. What's happening, everybody? How was everybody's Galactic Center? The Galactic Center activation. Did I put GS in there or GC? GS, man. What the hell is GS? What is Robert talking about? It's GC. It's Galactic Center. I don't know why I put GS. Maybe because I had my head too far up my Galactic Center. Is everybody having a good weekend? Are you guys enjoying the wonderful Venus-Jupiter conjunction? And conjuncting the Galactic Center. It's a bummer, man. Jupiter's leaving. Jupiter's leaving town. I'm going to miss Jupiter. My pal, my first house pal. And I suppose I get to look forward to it going into my second house, which I can certainly use a little Jupiter. So everybody could use a little Jupiter second house action, right? Am I right about that? One of the things that I teach in my astrology course are the benefits of having Jupiter in the second house, which I was not blessed with, by the way. Unfortunately, it's really weird. The bookends of family astrology, like how things are passed on from one generation to another. Like my father had Jupiter in the second house, and so does my son. So they both had the benefits of Jupiter in the second. I myself have not had the benefits. Now, I've shared this in my course. I actually used my father as an example of somebody who has Jupiter in the second house. He did not, I think the highest grade level he officially graduated from was about 10th grade. And then he wound up doing the GED test later on, much later on, and got his high school diploma. I don't think he ever made more than 45 or 50K a year, but he drove Mercedes, Cadillacs, had boats. He had all kinds of goodies, right? Oh, look who's here. It's the Astrological cat. So we play a song. I know you guys, how much you guys love his song. Let me see if I can get him in here. Let me see if I can pull this thing up. Oh, yeah. You know what we're talking about. You know what we're talking about. It is the most famous song, the most famous astrological cat song on the internet. I think it's number 1 right now, as rated by YouTube. Here we go. Let me put this in here. Jasper. Did I do it? Yes, I did. Jasper, the astrological cat. Look to the stars, I'll show you right where it's at. It's Jasper, the astrological cat. All right. There it is. Life is not as good as it could be without Jasper and the astrological cat song. Anyway, so my father, he had all this stuff, right? That's Jupiter in the second house. He had a bunch of, he always had stuff. He had good stuff too. He made sure that he had good stuff. How did he get all the good stuff? Well, you go to the opposite house. You go to the 8th house, and he used other people's money, also known as a credit card, right? So there was a lot of buying on credit in the Morris household as I was growing up. And then on the other side, my kid, he gets a lot of stuff. He's always had a lot of stuff. Like I said, he had an iPhone before I ever had an iPhone. He's never, and he's kind of lucky. He was lucky with stuff. I've seen him just like get things. People just give him things. And so that's Jupiter in the second house. If you have Jupiter in the second house, it doesn't always mean you're going to be rich or wealthy, although I have seen that. Uh, Donald J. Trump has Jupiter in the second house, and he's done okay, right? But it does mean that you have a lot. You can have a lot of stuff, a lot of goodies, a lot of material goodies. Conversely, with Saturn in the second house, which is what I have, you don't always have a lot of material goodies. I have eschewed having lots of things. I'm not a person that has a lot of things. It's like there's a time when I was doing my best to live out of a van. That's how few things I wanted, and I did it for a while. I did okay until it got super super cold and super super wet. And then I needed to readjust my living model there for a while, which I did. But I've definitely lived a life of Saturn in the second house with some austerity, sometimes enforced rather than accepted, but also also accepted as well. So yeah, we had this really fascinating Jupiter Venus conjunction, and with the galactic center. So I want to cruise chat room for a little bit, and I want to just see if you guys had anything really interesting to that happened to you over the last 48 hours. Let me take your celestial pulse, see what you've got going on. Oh, let's see. We heard you, but not the recording. Oh, I'm sorry. You heard me, but not the recording. Oh, shall we do it again? Well, thanks, Judy. Well, we've got to hear it again. You guys queue up your last 48-hour experiences. Meanwhile, I'm going to do the Jasper, the Astrological cat song. It should work. I've got everything going here. I don't know why it won't work. Computer sound, share. Let me do this. And I want to just see if you guys had anything really interesting to that happened to you over the last 48 hours. Jasper, let me take your celestial pulse, see what you've got going on. Oh, let's see. We heard you, but not the recording. Oh, I'm sorry. You heard me, but not the recording. Oh, thanks, Judy. Well, we've got to hear it. Okay. Did that work? I hope that worked, because you got to hear it. Is that it? Yes, there we go. It was great. All right. All right. All right. All right. The reset can be sung to Duran Duran's. Mr. Cruz, I got your email, by the way. I want to let you know I got your email. Thank you for that. And thank you for FENDAP. If you want to put that in the chat room, Mr. Cruz, go ahead and do that. So Mr. Cruz sent me an email, and he had a suggestion for a great website about Tartaria and some other goodies, and I haven't gotten to look at it yet, but he says it's a good one. So, Mr. Cruz, if you want, put it in there, and that will increase our edification. Our edification, yes, indeed, our edification and our education around the resetification. So I'm going to be connecting with. Hey, Jennifer. Jennifer, I owe you a call. I'm sorry. I'm going to try to get to you tomorrow if you're still interested. It's been a pretty crazy last few days. So I know that you want to connect, and if you still have time and you're still into it, I do have a little bit of time tomorrow before I take off and hit the friendly skies. Hit the friendly skies. So I'm going to be doing a show here, hopefully tomorrow, I'm thinking, with Jay Whitener, and Jay is on the reset train. Now, Jasper, you are doing something you've never done before. Jasper is trying to lay on the computer. This is a first for Jasper. Okay. This is a first. I think the Galactic Center has gotten a hold of him, and Jasper wants to put himself right into the computer. Jasper's wanting to go full Tron here. That's what I'm thinking. Jasper wants to become part of the Matrix. That's what I'm feeling. You can't do that. It doesn't work that way. You're already in there. You don't understand that. When I play your song, you're already in there. When you're on here, you're already in there. You don't understand that. You need to understand this. Okay. All right. Cool. So anyway, oh, you have questions for Jay. Okay, Steve, shoot me an email and I'll get them to you. Okay, Diana says I had a crazy wonderful day. My first dose of Dawn's meds. Oh, Dawn's working her magic. I like that. Good for you. Good for you. I'm glad Dawn is doing her thing. Delta Dawn. Let's have flower you got on. Miranda says that's an interesting conversation about Enneagrams yesterday. Okay. Interesting. Cross potent with Jasper. Jasper. He's a crazy guy. Crazy guy. Jasper's always moving the camera. I'm telling you. He's always, thank you, Joan. I appreciate that. He's okay. So, all right. Now, Jasper, what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to relocate yourself. You hear, Jasper, you're doing too much tonight. Jasper's really trying to get into the matrix tonight. Really trying to get. Okay, hold on, Jasper. I'm going to move Jasper. He'll probably come back. But ladies and gentlemen, just give him a little recognition. There he is. You always see his butt. You always see his tail, right? This is him right here. Jasper, the Wonder Cat. Okay, there you go. The Astrological Cat. We'll see you later, Jasper. Thanks for being a part of tonight's show. Let's give it up for Jasper. I'm sure he'll be back. So the one, sometimes when we get to stuff like the galactic center and Jupiter and Venus, sometimes our expectations can get a little high. Like, we're waiting for something tremendous, right? And I do think that, my experience has been very kind of like I've been experiencing this for like the last week and a half, 2 weeks. So last week when I did the show on the Tartaria reset and the astrology around that, I felt like I was really tapping into something. Because my Jupiter is 25 Sagittarius already. So I had my Jupiter return. And then it was all sort of, within that, 3 to 4 degree orb of the galactic center. So I felt like I've been on this galactic center ride for the last week and a half, 2 weeks. And I think a lot of what I was experiencing in relationship with that was being able to make these connections with the reset and the astrological sort of paradigm that went along with that. So it's been an interesting, not just for me 48 hours, but for the last 2 weeks with this. And I think you want to also not just look at the last 48 hours, but where you've been for the last 2 weeks. So last night I went to a talk that's given by the the Austin Astrological Society, AAS. And I did a talk there a couple of weeks ago, and I became a member because they do a lot of really good stuff there. So I'm a member of their society now, and I'm going to be doing some predictions for them. I'm on a prediction panel. I worked on some of that stuff yesterday. I'll probably print it out and put it on my website, but I need to refine it a bit more. And so anyway, last night they had Ricky Williams, the former running back, Heisman Trophy winner, Ricky Williams. And Ricky has become an astrologer. And so I got to meet Ricky and spent a little time with him. And here we are together. This was, he was great. He studied with Stephen Forrest. And the interesting thing about Ricky is that he has a lot of other disciplines that he brings to the table. Ricky is an herbalist. He teaches yoga. I think he's learning some Chinese medicine, and he's got his master's degree in psychology. And I think he's going for his PhD Jungian psychology. So he's 0 degrees Gemini. Of course, he's got a lot of different tools in his toolkit. But he did a great talk last night, and it was great connecting. And so I had a really interesting experience with him as he was going through his chart. And I'm going to get to the chart of the moment tonight too. We're going to talk more, but I felt like this was part of my galactic center sort of experience too, right? Because Venus was conjunct my Jupiter. Ricky, an athlete, former football player, and I think a lot of Sagittarian energy is connected to athletics, sports, the outdoors, the big outdoor sports like football, soccer, baseball, to some extent basketball, golf, surfing. All those are sort of in these big, expansive outdoor places. Fifth house tends to be more along the lines of games of chance and gambling. I think bowling, it's a hobby, kind of a fifth house sport. So there's a differentiation, between the fifth house and, certain pastimes, board games versus the ninth house, which is much bigger. Anyway, so I felt like this connection with Ricky was kind of a Venus Jupiter galactic center thing. So I had this really interesting experience with him. Well, just with the process, right? So he was talking about the nodes, and because people were asking questions about the nodes, and I remembered that there was a really interesting moment with Ricky Williams, and it was when he was drafted by the New Orleans Saints, and Mike Ditka, who is the coach of the Saints. I don't know if he was the general manager too back then. I don't know what Ditka's role was back then. I've got some really interesting connections indirectly with Ditka. Anyway, so he traded almost the Saints. I think they picked Ricky Williams, and that was it that day. I think they traded all their picks in that draft for Ricky Williams. So he was talking about the nodes, and I'm like, there is that really, really odd picture with Ricky Williams and Mike Ditka. And the picture, let's see if I can find it here. And I know you guys who are connected to sports in some ways know I got so much stuff on my desktop. You'd think that I'm a Virgo, but I'm not. I'm so not a Virgo. Maybe I can find this thing. Was that? No. Is it here? No, it's not that. Down here somewhere. Come on now. All right. Let me do this. Maybe it's over here. Ah, yes. There she goes. So this image was extremely popular and a little controversial. Now, there are those of us who look at that image and they would say, this is an MK Ultra thing, right? This is kind of what it's like what Dave Chappelle is talking about. So anyway, I looked at this image, and then Ricky actually talked about it, and I'm going to show you in a weird way why this thing happened the way it happened. So ESPN started to ask him about a week before, hey, we really want to have we want to put you on the cover with Mike Ditka. And we really want to have kind of an interesting and compelling cover. So they kept pitching this idea. Now, why would ESPN pitch this idea? It's kind of like, why did that guy show up in Dave Chappelle's trailer with a dress and say, hey, Dave, change the script. I want you to put this on. So Ricky said, hey, look, I've got a moon Uranus trine. I'm okay with this. He was okay with it because he thought it was goofy and far out, right? And different and weird. And again, he's got the moon Uranus trine. ESPN may have had a different kind of objective in mind or a different agenda. That said, I went in and I looked at Ditka, who's playing the bridegroom. All right, I went in and I looked at his charts. This is all happening in real time. I've got my cell phone out. Ricky's talking about the nodes. I know that that's, that this is taking place. So let me see if I can get in here and find the old chartaroo. All right, that's his natal chart. And what do we have here? Oh, yeah. Okay, so here's what I noticed. I noticed when I looked at, first of all, I looked up Ditka's birthday. What'd I tell you? I knew you'd be back. I looked up Ditka's birthday, and then I put Ricky's chart up there, and lo and behold, what I saw was the sun in Libra conjuncting Ricky's true node in Libra. And it was like they were a partnership. It was like they were a couple. And I said that, so I real time, I said, hey, so there's that picture of you and Ditka, and were you dressed as a bride? And he got into it and he said, yeah. ESPN wanted me to do this. I thought about it. I've got the Moon Uranus trine. I said, whatever. That sounds, I'll go with it. And then I said, well, did you know that Ditka has his sun at 24 Libra? He says, no, really? You're kidding. He says, well, that's on my true node. And I said, yeah, you're right. That is on your true node. Ricky's true node is 23 Libra. So we have this really interesting kind of bizarre coupling, right? It was like they were strangely enough in some kind of a marriage, right? But that's not the only picture that they did together. There's another one that they did, and this is where astrology, for me, just really speaks very loudly, right? You just see that there are these connections that, in many ways, just cannot be. Jasper, man, Jasper. I love you, brother, but you're being a cat tonight. Jasper's being a cat tonight. Imagine that. Jasper has the audacity of being a cat. My God. When is he going to learn? When is Jasper going to learn? So anyway, that wasn't the only picture. There's another picture. And let me grab it here, of Ricky and Mike Ditka. Let me throw it up here. Let's go. Ricky Williams and Mike Ditka. There we go. There's another picture of them with, you'll see. So here's the other picture of the two of them. As soon as the internet's not playing nice. Now, come on, internet, be my friend. Be my friend, internet. Just had this thing wrapped up here. Oh, here we go. No. Oh. There we go. Okay. Here it is. Here's the image. So this is the two of them, right? But it's a now here's Ditka throwing the dreads on. Here's Ricky next to him. But again, it's that Libra thing. Like they're together. Like in this image, it's Ditka who's trying to have a little cultural appropriation. Could you imagine if they did this picture today and what kind of shit they would get? Could you imagine that? It would be like, Mike Ditka is culturally appropriating something that doesn't belong to him. And here, back, when was this? This is 2010. This was a 1999 April 18th, 1999. You're having a good laugh. Now somebody's giving an apology. The world has drastically changed. But you could see astrologically that true node sun conjunction and how it's being worked out in a relationship between two men. Now, if that was a relationship between a man and a woman, that would be a really incredible. They could get married, right? I mean, that's like a marriage aspect, and in a weird way, they kind of did. Anyway, Ricky had a really good attitude about that. He was, and then Ditka afterwards said, "I would never have done that," to Ricky, and Ricky said, "Really?" He said, "No, I would never have done that." And then Ricky was like, "Well, why'd you tell me that now?" And it's like, he sort of, it was interesting. It was interesting. Anyway, he seems like a really good guy. And I gave my card, and hopefully, he'll. I invited him onto the show, so maybe one of these nights in the coming weeks, maybe next month or two, we'll get Ricky Williams on here as a guest. I think it'd be kind of cool. And it seems like he's going to do just fine as an astrologer. Studied with Stephen Forrest, gave a really good talk, and I wish him all the best in his endeavors as a practicing astrologer. So that was part of my Venus Jupiter conjunction with the Galactic Center with Mr. Ricky Williams. Okay, let's get back to the chart of the moment. Man, Jasper, you're in overdrive. Jasper is being. I think Jasper has been taken over by the Galactic Center because he wants to make himself the Galactic Center of attention tonight. Okay, we're having a test of wills. We're having a test of wills right now. All right, look at me. Yeah, that's right. That's right. Your spot. Hit your spot. Hit your mark. Let's get into the chart of the moment, which I think is a good place for us to segue into. Just do a refresh here. Okay. Yep, here it is. It's a really super clean chart of the moment. Let me tell you. Really super clean. Right here. There we go. Is this it? No, that's Ted Bundy. That's for later. We don't want that. It's Ted Bundy's chart. Here we go. It's Ted Bundy. There we go. Chart of the moment. There she is, 17, Cancer ascending. And we have Saturn-Pluto conjunction. And let's see. Oh, yes. There's that Jupiter-Venus conjunction. Venus has moved just ahead of Jupiter and trundling on its way to Capricorn. So let's just spend a little time again, since we're not going to see this for another 12 years. Another 12 years. And I think the conjunction here, I think the last time we had this exact like this was in 1960, the year that I was born. So we're not going to see this for a while, right? This has been a long time. It's been 59 years since we've had this Venus-Jupiter conjunction with the Galactic Center. Remember, this doesn't necessarily just, close, the curtain's closed and, the show is over. There's still things happening. There are still the vibration, the potential emanation and vibration of this event still occurring. And it's going to continue to occur, in my estimation, for at the very least the next few days and maybe even a little bit after that. And if you haven't had your Galactic Center moment, don't despair. But a lot of times these moments kind of get oversold in a lot of ways. And at the same time, I also think it's one of the, it's kind of one of those paradoxes because I do think this is an important time. I mean, if you, again, just look historically, it hasn't happened since 1960, 59 years ago. Not going to happen for quite a while. So we want to be able to kind of take that in, right? And at the very least, do your best to be grateful in your life. There's not a lot of challenge in this chart right now. There's not a lot of challenge. We've got the Uranus opposition to Mars, and then we have Uranus a wide opposition to the Moon. Maybe throw Mercury into that if you're going to be doing a 10-degree orb. But everything else is pretty flowy, and this is the energy you're going to be waking up to tomorrow when you theoretically start your week. Some of you may not be starting your week tomorrow, or maybe your week's just a continuation of every other week, or the day is a continuation of every other day, and that's fine too. But tomorrow is generally the day that theoretically, I mean, this is theoretically the first day of the week, right? Sunday is considered the first day of the week. And then really the real Sabbath is Saturday. And you get to rest that day and you're back again. But anyway, I digress a little bit. But tomorrow is the first day, and we're starting off with some energy that is flowing and open and easy, which is not something that we have been able to use as a word all that much recently, because these are not easy times that we're living in. These are not these are not easy conditions, even astrologically, that we're dealing with in terms of the big picture, and have not been for a while. But at the beginning of the week, it starts off a bit easy. And I think the best thing you can do with this is, at the very least, try to connect in with some gratitude in your life, because that's, I think, the real sweet spot with Sagittarius. Be grateful for what you have. Be grateful for what you can share. Be grateful for the gifts that have been given to you. Be grateful for the people in your life, even the ones that have caused you to grow. Let's put it that way. You got to be grateful for those people too. If you're growing, if you're not growing, then you got to figure out how to get to gratitude. How do you get to gratitude? You get to gratitude by growing. So this is a time where that can happen. And at the very least, if you keep it at that level and you really have some level of devotion, maybe some degree of piety, and I'm not using piety in the pejorative sense, but piety in the sense that you have a few moments where you take things seriously and humbly, and just appreciate where you are and what you have, then I think that even a modest relationship with these aspects can be quite beneficial. Quite beneficial. We're also going to be looking at the new moon coming up here at the beginning of the week as well. Now, Venus will have moved on. Venus is at 28, so I think it's going to be right at the beginning of the new moon, and I think we're going to be right at either anaretic Venus or just right into Capricorn. But we're coming up on a new moon as well in the sign of Sagittarius. Mercury is going to be moving forward, also in the sign of Sagittarius. That's at 13 degrees, of course, coming out of the retrograde cycle. We've got a moon Mercury conjunction tonight, which generally tends to bode well for intuition and to some degree psychic abilities. The moon Mercury conjunction is, in a natal chart, is exceptional for memory. Oh, Jasper, man, Jasper is just destroying the show tonight, man. I don't know what is up with Jasper, but he's been way more needy here than he has been in a long time. Jasper, what's going on with you? What is going on with you? If I was an animal, he's doing it again. If I was an animal communicator, I apologize for that. If I was an animal communicator, maybe I am a little bit. Do you guys tune into Jasper? We have some animal communicators in the house. Can you tune into Jasper for me? Find out what's going on with him. He seems happy. He's just how shall we say, a little more high maintenance. No, now he wants to bite me and fight me. He's got no teeth. Look, I'm grateful for Jasper. I really am. Practicing gratitude tonight for Jasper. And I've already kicked you out of here once. You've already been kicked out of Astrological Island once. So anyway, I think this is a good time for that. Also, again, that Mercury Moon conjunction. That's really an interesting conjunction. Like I said, it's good for memory. People that have Mercury Moon conjunctions in their chart generally tend to have pretty good memories and are trying to somehow figure out how to use uh, their rational and intellectual capabilities, infuse them with their instinctual and emotional capabilities. If this was somebody's chart, their birth chart, they were born at this time, this would be a pretty psychic person. Somebody gifted with some deep intuition. Mercury Moon conjunction, trine Neptune right here, and even with the Moon and Mercury trining the ascendant in Cancer, so that those planets could have some access and have the world pour through the chart, and then have the individual be able to flow into the world with their ideas. And this could be somebody who could be a really good orator, really good orator, if they were really balanced and emotionally focused, grounded, and centered. And then, of course, they'd also have this sextile going on, wide with Pluto, but a sextile nonetheless. But they would come from a place of intellect first, and then they would have their moon and their emotional body right behind it to blend. It's interesting. I think this would be a bit more difficult if the moon was before Mercury. If they were dealing with the Scorpio moon before Mercury here, then it would be the intense Scorpio. Sort of looking for the intense Scorpio first response, emotionally, and might even wind up taking things very personally in some ways, and then have to work things out sort of mentally, and try to understand, why things happen to them or how they feel a certain way. Here, the intellect, just a degree ahead of Mercury, of the moon, is more lucid and clear and rational. And then the moon behind it absorbs contact or absorbs ideas. So it's very interesting. But this would also be this person might have some difficulties with their mother with this moon Uranus opposition, and that there could be at times events or circumstances that would take them out and away from their mother or out and away from their own home because of this opposition with Uranus, which could be sometimes emotionally upsetting. And this is all very fixed down here in Scorpio. Well, this is fixed too, but Uranus is a very different kind of energy. So this is somebody who would have to deal with, at times, emotional upset, upheaval, and turmoil, specifically around their home and their mother at various points in times and circumstances in their life. But they would have to sort of be able to transform um, the at times serendipitous nature of events. And even with Uranus in the opposition, in conjunct with the Sun, they would this again. Let's just personify this. This would be a person who would try to understand why things happen to them. Why does this happen to me? Why does this happen to me? Why does this happen to me? Do I have free will or do I not have free will? Of course, in Sagittarius, it'd be a very philosophical exploration and discussion. And then we have Mars trundling along here at 3 Scorpio, just fresh in the sign of Scorpio, and fairly intense with a Mars Uranus opposition. And that's going to be hanging around tomorrow. So Mars Uranus oppositions, people can have experiences where out of the blue they're having to deal with situations that they have not signed up for, or they weren't prepared to encounter on some level. So all this is fixed energy. And it's a good thing we've got some mutable energy here because it allows us to do some editing with whatever happens that takes place, over the next 4 to 5 days, because Mars is going to be an orb here for the rest of the week. So this is interesting energy, right? This is all about what's coming at you, and Uranus and Taurus a lot of times can be monetary and dealing with things like security and structure, um, boundaries, and with Uranus, it's all going to get reset. It's all going to get reset. Everything that I just talked about: security, boundaries, borders, resources, money. The next 7 years, uh, it's going to be Mr. Toad's wild ride. For the week ahead, do your best to be vigilant. That's for sure. With Mars and Scorpio, and even from a monetary perspective, stay on top of your money. Know where your money's at. Know where it's going. Try not to get broadsided here. Let's see. We've got Chiron at 1 Aries. I'm going to talk a little bit about Chiron and Aries tonight. I'm going to talk again, bring it back to sports a little bit. But that's the week ahead. By and large, I think it's shaping up to be a good week. We just have this opposition that we're dealing with in the onset. And in 2 days, we've got the new moon coming in Sagittarius. So what are we talking about? It's going to be Monday, Tuesday. So Wednesday, we're going to get that new moon. It's a great new moon. It's kind of Galactic Center Part 2, even though, of course, they won't be conjunct the Galactic Center. But the moon does connect into things like memory, and it connects into remembrance and nostalgia in a lot of ways. So one of the things that I've been dealing with and kind of really getting into is this whole idea about Tartaria and the worlds that existed before this theoretical uh, version of reality that we're living in now. And last week I got into that, and we looked at it. We looked at the astrology for 1848, 1849, 1850. We looked at the current astrology, which I do believe is the astrology of the reset. And, that really resonated with a lot of people. And then Emily and I did a show, I think it was the following day, on Monday, where we got into even more of this. And that's another. So, what really speaks to me about this whole idea of Tartaria and the reset is how many people really resonate with it. That's kind of like it feels. It's like when I saw, even when I was a kid, and I looked at those pictures from the San Francisco World's Fair, and I would find myself going out to the Palace of Fine Arts a lot. Like when I lived in the city, I would go there a lot. Or even if I didn't go to the city, I'd like to go there and hang out. I just wanted to be around that structure because it made me feel I got a really peaceful feeling. And I just wanted to live in that neighborhood. I wanted to wake up every day. I wanted to live across the street from the Palace of Fine Arts. I wanted to wake up every day and look at that in my front window of my place. That's how connected I felt to the Palace of Fine Arts. And I think that there's something about those structures, and that gets into that Mercury Moon conjunction I was just talking about, which brings us into the past. And in Scorpio, it brings us into our deep past, because when we get into Scorpio and we get into the eighth house, we're moving into sort of the deep psychic trench of the transpersonal. And I've always used this analogy for the eighth house is when you get to the eighth house, you're dropping off the Mariana's chart trench of the chart. It just goes from here to here, and you're into the deep void, and you're in the deep part of the pool. So when we talk about Moon in Scorpio, Mercury in Scorpio, that's the kind of resonance that we're talking about. And because again, the Moon has the ability to move backwards in time. We can move forward in time, I'm sure, but we always think of the moon in terms of the Cancerian properties, which takes us back to our home, our family, our roots, our nostalgia, the things that we thought were maybe better at one time, but maybe truly weren't. I think some things were. I know in my own life, there's some things were and some things weren't. Like I can look back at my own childhood, my own family. It's like, this was really interesting and fun and cool. This wasn't so interesting and fun and cool. But, that's me. But that's why I think Tartaria is speaking to people, because it speaks to people in a way that wakes up their internal clock, a different time. And there's something about those structures that are also um, way more aesthetically pleasing than what we inherited. I'm not talking about the buildings that we inherited. I'm talking about the architectural styles we inherited in the 20th century. Frank Lloyd Wright excluded. I'm speaking mainly of Walter Gropius and the Bauhaus School, where form follows function. So if you wanted to create a building that was, going to produce can openers, well, do the math on that, right? There wasn't anything. It was all about functionality. But those buildings speak to another part of us that I also think is quite thirsty, and thirsty for, I talked about this on Friday, thirsty for beauty. And beauty is not, when I was talking about beauty, I wasn't talking about like superficial beauty. I was talking about beauty and aesthetic values that move us in a way that is almost, kind of borderline mystical experience. When you look at the definition of the mystical experience by William James, the brother of Henry James, the author, who did a study on what a mystical experience is. And there are like these, bullet points. If you get these bullet points, it's like, okay, cool, you qualify. Well, one of the qualifications for a mystical experience is ineffability, meaning you cannot explain the thing. Sort of like, what happens to you on, on an acid trip. There are things on an acid trip you cannot explain. Not that I wouldn't know. Not that I would know. But, it's been, uh, full disclosure, it's been a very long time since I've done any of that. Very, very long time. But there was a time in my life where it was a passport to another world for me, and one that I really got some interesting insights into. But you come back and it's like, how do I explain this, right? I mean, that's sort of the definition of ineffability. So when we look at some of these pictures or art at times that moves us, we may not always be able to articulate it. And even when we can articulate it, sometimes it doesn't even do the art justice. It's like I'm trying to explain something that is way more beautiful and profound or moving than I actually have a vocabulary to pull from, right? So when I look at some of that Tartarian architecture, when I look at some of these um, buildings from these various World's Fairs, that's the response I go to, and I think that's why people resonate with this thing so much, because it speaks to something that, number one, we're missing in our lives. And number two, um, a level of beauty and aesthetics, and even possibility, that feels like it's become kind of a closed loop in this lifetime or in this domain, in this reality. So, what do I mean by that? Well, if you go into the Tartaria, uh, mythos or the Tartarian potentiality, one of the things that always comes up in the discussion around this is some form of free energy. Because when you put it all together and you look at the churches and you look at the the Antiquitech, and you begin to make kind of put the pieces together, and there's Tesla there, and he's right around that time, and what's he doing, and where did he get this stuff from, and and you begin to think about, geez, these people probably had very sophisticated technology, and they probably had free energy. And this is why they're able to light these cities up, and they're using mercury bulbs and all kinds of interesting stuff. So that even speaks to another part of ourselves. It doesn't speak to our selves that resonate with the past, or kind of this nostalgic yearning for something that's there. This is part of the true note in Cancer too, bringing it back to astrology. Here we are, the first decan of Cancer, and we're looking at something that feeds us. And when I sent Jay Weidler my show from last week, he was like, well, I've been on the fence with Tartaria. And then after I did the show and gave him some links, he's like, he's all over it. So we're going to do something tomorrow, I think. But that's what I'm talking about. It's like that's that true node in Cancer and the mana. It's like you just want to get into that. Like, holy shit, man! There's something deep here, and it's like it's almost like part of us got wrenched out from that place and time, and now it's like, well, we want to put it back together, but it also speaks to the future as well, and especially I mean, we've got solar and passive and this and that, and you and I know full well that these guys have been sitting on free energy for a fuck of a long time, okay, a long time, and it's like, come on, guys, come on, it's already been here. Probably had a whole world lined up and lit up by this stuff. Okay, you destroyed it. You tore it down. You decided you wanted to create your own new version of reality, and then create this inferior form of electricity, and then charge us all. And based on this, and even some of the things that we know and stories that we know, that's bullshit. So it speaks to our future as well. And it's like, well, what would happen if we did have something along the lines of what theoretically the Tartarians had, pulling energy out of the ether and drawing it down, and throwing it out through this grid, and the grid itself was set up like like sigils. The grid itself would be a transmitter of energy, right? That's how they would do this stuff. They'd set the grid up, the city grid. It was like, oh, okay, look, it's just like the thing that we're using right up here to conduct the energy. They were very smart. Somebody who had a lot of know-how, but it speaks to our future as well. It's like, God, wouldn't that be great? It'd just be a game changer, total game changer, and really move us back into more of the true Aquarian age, versus this reset, which is going to take place. Well, at least they want it to take place. And I got into that on this show, and I got into it more in Emily's show as well, which is it's already happening. And if you guys followed that show, you'll know what I'm talking about. But it's happening in a way where it feels like, well, or feels like it looks like it's organic, but it's really not. It's socially engineered. The same people that did the first reset, or at least the latest version of this reset, and the one that we're in now, they're doing it again. They're pulling the levers and pushing the buttons, and they're doing it all over again. So one of the things that's really interesting about that story, and like, you can't get into the reset story without talking about the orphans and the orphan trains. And again, this is a very unusual part of America's history that not a lot of people talk about, and not a lot of people even really know about. That they had thousands and thousands of kids. Let me see if I can pull up a picture here. Hold on a sec. Where is this? Okay. Some of these images are they're stunning and mind blowing, right? Here's a so check this out, man. This is some of the imagery around these orphan trains. And let me pull this up here. This really gets into sort of the true note and cancer stuff as well, right? Because it talks about home and children and man, this stuff is just mind blowing. Stolen history. Here we go, right here. This is a pretty good website for exchanging information in the Tartarian stuff. Here we go. These are the orphan trains. During the 1850s, there were thousands of children living on the streets of several major cities. This gets into Dickens as well. Oliver, right? Oliver. The children were in search of food, shelter, money, and sold rags, matches, and newspapers just to survive. The children formed gangs for protection because life on the street is dangerous, and they were regularly victimized. Police often arrested the children, some as young as 5 years old, and put them in lockup facilities with adult criminals. Determined to remedy the situation, the Children's Aid Society and the New York Family and Hospital devised a program to take children off the streets of New York and Boston and place them in homes in the American West, rather than allow them to continue to be arrested and taken advantage of on the streets. Because the children were transported by train to their new homes, the term orphan trains began being used. The orphan train movement was a supervised welfare program that transported orphaned and homeless children from crowded eastern cities of the United States to foster homes located largely in rural areas of the Midwest. The orphan trains operated between 1854 and 1929, relocating about 200,000. Now, that's an interesting number because that could go either way. It could either be less or it could be more. I'm betting it's probably more. With the official narrative, while the official narrative is talking about 200,000, it is highly probable that there were millions. I'm more in that camp. Similar orphan-related operations were getting executed all over the world. Some children were allegedly moved to a different country. Makes you wonder why, right? I know the issue of orphan children has been brought up in this forum before. Therefore, I wanted to encourage our forum members to watch the YouTube video created by Conspiracy RS, inspired by Flat Earth British. Conspiracy RS ties a few things together. The presented analysis could explain why our current civilization has no recollection of any of the catastrophic events which might have happened between the 1850s and the 1930s. So there we go. These are the orphan children, right? Look at this. Look at these faces. Look at how many of them. And these are kids that are basically dressed to work. And that is exactly what they're doing. That is exactly what they're doing. They are working. And here they are. We see them working. This looks like it's either a paper mill or a textile mill. Look at that. The parents were either killed in our famous no victim suburban fires, were those part of one big war. So there's a lot going on here. Child labor is the employment of children, right? What a bizarre phenomenon. This goes on and on and on. So this idea that we can't have a discussion about Tartaria without talking about this orphan children piece. And if you think about this from a collective level, collective experience, and collective trauma, and how it descends downwards into generations, that this event with these kids has affected a great number of us, because those kids, you know, they married, they had children, their children had children, right? And they didn't all marry and have children together. They married and had children with other people as well, or other kids that probably may not have been orphan kids. But that's a large number in the millions spreading outward genetically over time, and you would look at the sort of the genealogical branches and roots around that, and that generation, or that sense of being homeless or not belonging, right? That is also that's inside of us to some degree, way, shape, or form. I'll move it forward kind of one more level, right? Again, if we're talking about a model of the reset and we're in the new reset, what are we seeing now on the streets of America? We're seeing homeless. Like the numbers around the homeless are crazy now. They're crazy. I mean, the numbers, I've never seen so many homeless people. And I've seen homeless people for a while. I mean, I used to see homeless people growing up, but nothing like this. And so now we have another echo of the reset, and they're not children, but they may as well be because they're dependent. Like in a lot of ways, these kids who were from these orphan trains, I mean, they may have been homeless, but they were not hooked. They were not strung out and hooked on fentanyl or and they would work. I mean, you saw them. They're like working on child labor. They were more, in some ways, more functional and adult, even though they were homeless, than today's homeless, who in many ways are much more infantile and dependent. But we still have them. So again, there's another kind of iteration and level of the reset that we're experiencing. And with the true node in Cancer, this is how it manifests. It's manifesting in this memory, right? It's this memory, this collective memory of this place, this time, that somehow, somewhere, kind of feels like it. This actually feels really right, right? This version, it's resonating. And then you bring the kids in, and now we're really into this resonator. Remember when I hit that map, right, where the chart for the reset in 1851, where was the true node? It was in Cancer, right where it is now. And what were they doing during that time? They were shipping them out, shipping these kids out. And this even goes back into my own personal story. Like with my own genealogy on my father's side, it's like there's a part of my father's side. It's like I don't know where it goes or where it even comes from. And so my father had a father who was really damaged goods. This guy. So my grandfather that I never knew, he was really damaged goods. He apparently was good at many different things. He was in the Army, but he was a terrible alcoholic. And my grandmother divorced him. She married him when she was 16 years old, had my father when she was 17. And I think by the time that my father was around 6 or 7, they were done. And she divorced him and left. And eventually, my paternal grandfather was in the Army, and he eventually wound up dying in a car accident because he drank too much. And his father was somebody who was like an itinerant sort of wanderer, vagrant. He was a guy that worked on, oil fields or wherever he could get work. So this is my father's side, and before him, there's like foster homes, foster parent stories, and even my father had a stint in foster homes as a child because my grandmother couldn't afford them at times. So so in a weird way, I feel very connected to this. To these orphan trains, because it feels to me like on my father's side that's where he originated from. That there is this descent from this kind of orphaned past. And my mother's side is very, very different because there are records, long-standing records about my mother's family who eventually moved to Long Island in New York in the 1700s, and they're there, right? But this stuff is very different, and I've always wondered why did these men kind of evolve down this path, and why was there adoption and foster homes and all this stuff? And the orphan trains and this experience begins to, to speak to me in a lot of ways. But again, bringing it forward into our time, we're seeing again this iteration of these orphans. They're the homeless, right? They don't have homes, they don't have jobs. They've been orphaned by society, and they're more childlike than the orphans of the 1849s and the 1850s, which is ironic, right? It's very ironic, but it's true. So again, with the true node in Cancer, what we're trying to do is we're looking at these issues and these feelings and these markers in our lives. And I do believe that it's not just a generational marker, it's a transgenerational marker. And it's opening up this much deeper narrative about what took place in this country and around the world as well. So it feels to me like that there was, like, even when you go back and you look at the Pied Piper Hamlin, which is a theme that's come up quite a bit over the last year on a number of different levels with the Pied Piper of Hamlin. And again, going back to that time where they had Saturn in Capricorn, Pluto in Capricorn, in the North Node in Capricorn. That was during the Pied Piper Hamlet's time. And even when you go back and look at that last time that Saturn and Pluto were together with Martin Luther, what do they talk about? They talk about the Reformation. There's another level of this kind of reformatting. But the Pied Piper Hamlin now begins to take on a very different kind of tenor or character. When we talk about children, we talk about the homeless, because those kids got to go somewhere, right? He comes in, basically, takes the rats away, and then he comes in and starts playing his flute, and all of a sudden the kids are totally tranced out, and they take him away. He takes them away. He takes them off to these other kingdoms. The story is that he takes them right into the earth. Think about that for a moment. The story of the Pied Piper Hamlin is that he takes them right into the side of this mountain and then disappears with them. Is that uncommon? I mean, let me just say, if we were to talk about this now, based on what we theoretically, what we might know about with what goes on inside of mountains or caves or under the earth, that story takes on a very different kind of connotation. Very different kind of connotation. Because the idea was that these kids wound up getting moved into other palaces around Europe, other kingdoms around Europe, other villages around Europe, and that's quite possible. But the possibility that they disappeared into a mountain doesn't seem so strange now, in a weird way. So I think that they'd been working on this for a while. I think they had amassed large numbers of children. There's stories of entire villages in Italy just disappearing. Just people gone. Like, where do they go? I mean, we saw this obviously with the Mayans, just gone. The Ansati, gone. Whole populations just, see ya. The Olmecs, they're there, they're not there, they're gone. And like I said, they've got instances in Western Europe, Italy, where this village is just gone, city's gone. So where do they go? Where do these kids come from? So here, I'm going to lay this out here. Again, I'm just throwing this out as a theory for the reset stuff, because you may as well take advantage of Venus conjunct Jupiter in the galactic center. So, and again, I haven't, maybe somebody else has this theory out there as well, and they've got a whole website dedicated, devoted to it. If that's the case, I haven't been there. This is just something that I've been playing around with in my head. But my theory is that they had all these kids, and at some point they were going to use them to repopulate. Now, what I feel like happened is that they knew what was going on with these cities. They knew what was going on with the mud flood. They had already had like advanced scouts out there. They'd already seen sort of what was available, and whether it was Uh, for like, if you like Sir Francis Drake, there's a record of Sir Francis Drake hitting California in the early 1700s, or is it 1760s or something like that? I mean, Francis Drake was even before that, but he was in California. So Sir Francis Drake knew stuff, right? He knew stuff, and you had a lot of the early explorers from Spain and Portugal. They knew stuff too, right? So they probably went back and said, "You won't fucking believe this," but you know that place over there, it's got cities, tons of them. So with that in mind, what do you think that the rulers of Europe did? The rulers of Europe, aka the Black families of Europe or the Venetian families, made a plan. And the plan was that they were going to come in and then populate these cities, use the existing infrastructure, use the existing grids, cities, the streets, and everything that was already kind of there. And they were going to move these kids from these orphan trains and then a few kind of select people to run these operations in these reset Tartarian mud flood cities. That's what I think happened. They knew what was here and they had a plan, and their plan was also going to be about eradicating time and creating an entirely new history. This is what I think happened. And then one of the if you look at Rockefeller, Rockefeller is the person that starts the American school system. Rockefeller is also involved in creating allopathic medicine and being behind the AMA and creating, the what we would call medical technology, things like iron lungs and all that stuff. But when he creates the school system, he's doing two things. Number one, he's writing the curriculum. They are writing the curriculum. They're writing the curriculum and they're creating the history in the Rockefeller created school systems. So they're already starting out to create this new version of history. And they're also educating these children so that they can become workers in their workforce and help them make hundreds of millions and billions of dollars. So again, from the onset of the reset, when you have the American educational system started by the Rockefellers, it's not just about education. It's about teaching a version and a model history that is probably highly edited. Let's put it that way. Highly, highly edited. So I think that's part of the plan. That was part of the plan as well. But I think this thing is stirring up a deeper memory inside of us. Fast forward, you want to talk about the modern version of the reset? It's happening now too. Look at what they're doing with education in the United States. If you're not paying attention, they're basically turning American education into a social justice re-education system and center. They had sweeping changes. And no matter what you did here in Austin, if you were not down with their curriculum, didn't matter. They were going to do it anyway. Their message was change. I know change is sometimes hard, but ultimately it's good. Basically saying, hey, fuck you. We're going to change your curriculum. We're going to teach your kids shit you don't want them to learn, but too bad. You've got to deal with change. And that's what they're doing. It's the new version of the Rockefeller reset, new history, the eradication of the last 150 years. That's what's going on. The eradication of what it's like to be a man and a woman, a boy and a girl. The eradication of what is considered to be, well, sexual union and consent, all that's being eradicated. It's all going away. And now they want your kid basically from 6:30 in the morning to 6:30 at night. They want it all day. And by the time they get home, they're going to be too tired, too stressed out to interact with you because they're going to be processing everything they did the entire day. So what you're going to do is you're going to be giving up your kids to this system. And it's happening. Oh, it's coming. It is coming. And those kids are going to be, they're going to be like the new orphans, right? Because they're not going to be at home. They won't even be at home anymore. And this gets into that south node, true node opposition. Saturn in the south node, where the state comes in and says, we're going to take your kids out of your home. Americans, you better wake the fuck up. Get your kids out of school. I'm serious. It's a seditious thing to say. I know, but it's true. If you want to have any chance, any shot of your child having a life of normalcy, you find yourself in private school or find yourself a homeschool, because they're gonna be orphans of the reset. That's what they're gonna be. All right, let me check in with you guys. See where you're at. I got a lot more to do, but I'm not sure how much longer I'm gonna go because I want to watch a football game and I've been talking for a while. Anyway, where are we at here? My 6-year-old nephew is terrified of tornadoes. They told him that he would be killed and went, lovely. Isn't that great? Let's see. They're teaching about climate change and scaring the crap out of kids. Yep. Make Tartaria great again. I love it, man. Oh, yes. They're making it social justice, not school. That's right. People lived average of 150. Search abandoned homes on YouTube. And the videos are endless. They don't teach any positive, important things in history. They teach from one war to another. Good point. No spirit in any of it. That's right, Steve. Makes me think of the green children that appeared in Spain. He also made oil be classified as a fossil fuel, which is not. Good call, Matt. It's not a fossil fuel at all. Wonder what any native tribes might know about Tartarian cities. Okay, good point. So there's a really interesting video that John Levy did about the Cherokee. And he showed pictures of the Cherokee. They don't look like the Cherokee that Hollywood has depicted as a Cherokee. His pictures of the Cherokee tend to be pretty diverse. That they are people that represent a Cherokee nation that are fairly fair-skinned. Their clothing does not look like they're running around with a little leather flap between their legs. Looks very sophisticated and in some ways quite European. And there's Levy seems to think that the Cherokee they weren't teepee or hut builders, that they were actually house builders. And that some of the plantations of the South were actually occupied by the Cherokee. So this idea that the native people were these notable savages may need to be revisited. Now, I'm not saying that there were other groups, maybe the Plains Indians, that were different, but just look up Levy's stuff on the Cherokee. It looks very different. Very, very different. And then, of course, the Trail of Tears happens, which means get the fuck out of here. We want this stuff. Right? That was kind of another model of, taking and possessing these properties. All right, let's see what else we got in the chat room. The last time I gave a panhandler a $10 bill, she rolled her eyes and says, well, I guess that will help. I haven't given any money since. In the christening of RUS, supposedly Rus, they killed all the able adults that didn't convert. Only the old and young were left. So the Vedic ways were already disappearing thousands of years ago. Let's see. There are vortexes like black holes all over the planet. Groups of people, civilizations have evolved where they simply vanish, what we consider ascension. It's a good point, Ani. Let's see. Steve says today, I had a friend in my car who's occasionally homeless. We pulled up to a light And a homeless lady was panhandling. It was a little uncomfortable. Who do I help? So I kept the money. Laugh out loud. 1-0 drag reminds me of Queen Elizabeth and Philip taking his children into the forest. The kids don't come back. With 2020 being a revolutionary overturning year, a lot of people could go missing. That's true. The homeless in my area, LA, are doing great, very clean, stacked for trash in, trash day. I think that first they thought that there would be help, but impeachment seems like the cause du jour. Yeah, that's a really interesting point, Mr. Cruz. It's like, there could be some very concerted effort to help these people out, but instead they'd rather just go after Trump, right? Let's see what else we have. Seattle seems to be a certain spirit pushing the homeless. What else do we have here? Very infantile. You give them everything, but they have no skills. Poor mom lived in 23 foster homes for the age of 9. Wow. Born in 1942. I think it's a lot more common than we think. Let's see, what else do we have? Pluto was in Taurus during the 1850s and 60s. That's right. It was part of the reset. Yep. Uranus and Pluto made that shift together. We looked at that last week. Let's see. What else do we have here? Many children in the textile mills because of their nimble fingers. Yes, and they had to have someplace to go. Where was Pluto in the 850s? Okay, we got that. Let's see what else. You could order Orphans, mail order back in the day, like Sears catalog. Interesting. Good to see you in the house, Misaki. Lori sure explains a lot why so many families are so fractured, have no links to the past, why we're so oblivious about our true past. Reminds me of Barbara Handcloud's book, Catastrophobia. Robert, great show on Native Rockers. Jessia Davis was there. Jessia Davis. I remember Jessia Davis. I think Jessia Davis played with John Trudell. I had John on my show a couple times. John was interesting. He was a great guy. He was really great. When John was on, man, he was on. John was a true Aquarian. When John got going, he was worth sitting down and watching a couple hours with. Okay, what else do we have here? Remember to hit that like button. Hit that like button. Hit that like button. Like it. Cherokee Nation was helped by Scottish Cherokee man, affectionately called Cherokee John. Cherokee language has many similarities to Hebrew. Ooh, that's nice. Many believe them to be one of the lost tribes of Israel. There we go. Now we're heading some direction. Let's see. Don't mess with the redhead cloud. Cherokee had the only written language in the newspaper. They mixed easily with initial Scotch-Irish. There we go. They made sure to kill all the white Indians to inconvene for the reset history. That is true. You guys are so sharp. You guys are so sharp. Went to a small town light show last night. Made a connection with a woman named Spirit. Interesting. Okay, I think I'm going to get on out of here. I was going to talk about Myles Garrett. I was going to talk about Ted Bundy. Look at Ted Bundy's chart. I'm going to skip that. It's a little dark. Myles Garrett is I was going to get into a Friday show with the True Node and the South Node, True Node in Cancer, South Node, North Node in Cancer, South Node in Capricorn. I look for people who personify the nodes on a kind of a collective basis with the outer story. And last year, the two that really jumped out were Alex Jones and Joe Rogan, with Joe Rogan being a Leo and Alex Jones being an Aquarius. And we knew that the true nodes were Leo and Aquarius. And Joe Rogan, of course, was going up and Alex Jones was going down. So for now, this time, it's really looking like Mason Rudolph, Cancer quarterback for the Pittsburgh Steelers, and Myles Garrett, Capricorn defensive player for Cleveland Browns, and of course their stories now will be intertwined through, however long we remember what sports are, because Myles Garrett took his football helmet and swung it and hit Mason Rudolph in the head. And Myles Garrett has been suspended, and Mason Rudolph is still playing, although he was benched today because he was doing a lousy job. So here we have the true node in Mason Rudolph, kind of getting some sympathy and getting clocked in the head, and Myles Garrett being suspended for the rest of the season, maybe even into next year with his South Node in Cap. Myles Garrett's chart is complicated. He has a Sun Neptune conjunction in Capricorn. A lot of confusion in many ways with Myles Garrett. So, but I'm not going to get into it too much. They just represent this personification of the nodes, and I look for these things sort of collectively and socially in order to communicate that story. Okay, so I think that's it for tonight. I'll be working on my newsletter this week, some upgrades to the site, and putting in a subscription program. I'm not going to be doing whatchamacallit, Patreon. I'm going to be doing something else. I'm going to be playing with an app called Liberapay, because I wanted to get out. I don't want to get into the Patreon world, so I want to be putting that together. Be putting the newsletter together. I'm going to spend some time out in California and do some work on the website and a bunch of other stuff. Looking forward to that. And I'll do some shows this week. Tuesday, I'm actually be traveling, so looks like I'll do Wednesday, Thursday. Maybe I'll try to squeeze in a Friday show, but I'll do some 15 minutes of flame from the West Coast. All right, thanks everybody for tuning in. I hope you enjoy the last degrees of the galactic center and the conjunction with Venus, and do your best to be grateful in your life. And maybe that's the greatest gift that we can get out of this alignment. Take it all in as much as you can, and enjoy the rest of your night. Have a fantastic week. I'll circle back on Wednesday. Use your head to discern what's real, your heart to stay open, like 7-Eleven 24/7, and what's possible. I'm Robert Phoenix. Have yourself a great night. Take good care.